one of the things that always jumps out at me about feedback informed treatment is that it has a certain level of almost like a quality about it, right? In that, when we think of really highly effective psychologists, I think that many people think of the person up on the stage with the light shining down on them, talking about whatever part of therapy is important to an audience of 100 or 200 or 1,000 people. And what I love about looking at outcomes is that when I have seen some people's results, and you would have seen more than me, I find it's actually more the quieter, reserved, maybe more considered and inward type individuals that have really spectacular results. And we've got a psychologist here in Geelong, Steve Carroll, who's one of those people that I plan to interview who did the ICCE training as well. So, what do you make of that? That it's not always the people on the stage that necessarily have the great results. And have you seen that kind of trend that it might be the more considered and reserved individuals that particularly do well with results?
So let me answer that first on a research level and then get to the specifics. Let me see how I want to address this. What we've done for the last 50 years is test model A against model B, or mostly what we've actually done is test model A against nothing, a sham treatment, a placebo treatment, a waitlist control. And in almost all instances, whatever the treatment is more effective than the sham. That has led to certain models being adopted. You mentioned one of them, CBT. I have nothing against CBT. It's the most researched model in the history of our field. And what we've done in those studies is not studied whether or not people using or learning to use CBT become more effective. We do have one study like that out of the UK, spent a massive amount of money training therapists in CBT over a year, supervised them, had experts evaluate their performance so that they could not tell the difference between experts and the people who'd been trained in CBT during that study. What did they find? Outcomes didn't improve at all. So simply because we have these models taught by entertaining and engaging people doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate into improved effectiveness. And I think when we're evaluating whether or not you're going to be more effective, we have to look at what is that person really good at. If they're on the stage, chances are they're good at teaching and engaging an audience. Doesn't say anything about their effectiveness with the individual client. So that's one part of this. The other part is what happened to us as a team when we started calling people who had solid high performance as clinicians, who were sometimes a standard deviation more effective, who would over the course of their career help 10 times as many people.
Mm.
And when we first started watching their videos, I have to say it was truly uninspiring and also worrisome because a lot of what they didn't seem to go anywhere in the moment. But that's because Anders Ericsson said, we were looking in the wrong place. We were watching a very narrow part of what leads to success. It's like watching a pro golfer swing and then trying to copy the swing, when actually what led that pro golfer to be more effective was what they did when you weren't watching, when they were practicing, when they were deliberately reaching for objectives that they couldn't reach. So at one level, I think FIT shows that there are a diverse and probably an infinite number of ways to be helpful to other people. It gives that permission to try and experiment. Oh, I'm sort of losing my train of thought here. Let me see if I can pull it together and get back to your question.
Couldn't note it up. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that what I've seen when I'm watching the top performers is a variety of styles and approaches, whether they're approaching people primarily about their thinking or their behavior or their emotions or something else entirely. Here's an interesting thing. We did a little study just a few years ago that showed that tarot card readers and psychics and mediums had outcomes and relationships just as impactful and good as psychotherapists. That shouldn't make you discouraged.
Mm.
That should make you happy because there are many avenues to improving your sense of well-being. And it doesn't mean that you should buy a set of tarot cards either. What it means is that you should monitor your outcomes and look for opportunities to improve both individually with each client. I missed hearing what was most important to you. I assumed this about your worldview, but actually I'm learning now that it's something else entirely. And in the aggregate, to come back to something you said earlier, I noticed that in my overall data that I'm more effective with men
Mm.
rather than women, or with transgenders client, or some other population of people that might come to my office. Why is that? What might I do? Should I simply curtail admitting those folks into my practice, or should I do what I think most therapists will do, which is find a coach,
Mm.
help me know how I can help this particular person?